So thank you everyone for being with us. We're just about at 12 o'clock. So we'll start going through our slides here. If you would, please put your name in the chat. We are very happy to have Miss Adrienne Thomas with us today, who is going to be talking about protecting the soul of Louisiana communities, an arts, culture, and humanities and equity initiative. She is the Stakeholder Engagement Manager for the Equity Office for FEMA, so we're very happy to have her with us today. Of course, here are all these wonderful smiling faces that bring this program to you each month. We make up the BCC management team. We always like to say that we don't have all of the answers, nor do we support any one adaptation management strategy, but we are just here to explore those topics to try to figure out ways for us to move forward most successfully in the face of the challenges that we're up against as a coastal community. Well, we also have some wonderful partners that bring this program to you monthly, as well as our funders who are listed here. We could not do this program without their support. Another great program that we have that Ms. Maida Owens manages is the Passing It On workshops. And so I would like to hand the microphone over to Maida to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, Jonathan, this is a particularly exciting workshop that happened, exciting for me, because split oak basket making is one of the most endangered traditions in the state. And Geraldine Robertson moved out to live with family about 10 years ago to California. And last year, she called up and had heard that we were doing these workshops and maybe she could do it. So we brainstormed, and it's happening. The final one is happening right now in Port Allen. It turned out that the West Baton Rouge Museum was very interested in helping Geraldine. When Geraldine proposed this, it's like, you never know. Don't be too certain that you know what somebody should do. Geraldine wanted to do 5 consecutive days, all day. And I said, who in the world's going to come? But that's what she wanted to do. And the West Baton Rouge Parish Museum decided that they would support her. They had 15 people plus about 5 others. Like when they first announced it, they had 15 people on the wait list. And what's extra exciting about this is that I helped Geraldine find land where she could harvest the trees, because for it she needed 3 oak trees that are 4 to 6 inches that to split would be very specific. And so she could, her land, the land that the owner that she had arranged pulled out, and she called, where can I do this? So I called up state parks, and we arranged for her to be able to go harvest 3 trees from Port Hudson State Historic Site. So I am just thrilled with this workshop.
So what, and forgive me for interrupting, but so, because I would have loved to been able to participate in that, but again, I mean, it's hard for me to have the 5 days. So I understand you being like, who's going to come to this? But I'm so glad that people did. Was there a way to document the workshop as well?
Well, and again, the workshops happen in 2 different ways. Sometimes a tradition bearer comes to me and they do it, they produce it. It's their network, it's their community, it's all set. The other way is when an organization is involved, and that's the West Baton Rouge Parish Museum stepped in, and they decided they wanted to document it, because when they went out just to scout for the trees, which this photograph is from, they got so excited about everything, and so they are documenting it with video this week.
That's wonderful. That's great. Yeah,
there are only 3 people in the state that I'm aware of that know how to do the entire process.
Yeah,
she's one of them, and the other 2 are inactive. So
yeah. I'll get with you after because I would love to get some information from, on her to see if she'd be willing to do another one of those workshops in this area, if possible. I don't know if she travels but that's wonderful. That's really great because that definitely is one of our traditions that, yeah, without her teaching folks, we'll lose, so. That's really great. Thank you so much for that, Maida. I appreciate that. All right, so this is our agenda for today. We're going to have Ms. Adrienne Thomas do a presentation for us, and then you'll be able to ask her questions, and we'll have a bit of a discussion. We'll then ask Adrienne what is her hope for the coast. We'll talk a little bit about the position statement that we have for the Bayou Culture Collaborative and the Bayou Culture Gatherings. We'll update you a little bit on the work of the working groups. We'll ask if any of you have any announcements that you'd like to share with us. And then, of course, we're here until 1:30 when we continue the discussion. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Ms. Adrienne Thomas to all of you. And we look forward to your presentation. Thank you so much for being with us, Adrienne.
Thank you. So I want to start by introducing you to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and our mission statement is to help people before, during, and after disasters. Who is FEMA? FEMA was established in 1979, and after 9/11, FEMA became a part of the United States Department of Homeland Security. We have 10 regions within the agency. Region 6 is comprised of New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and the great state of Louisiana. FEMA works with the whole community. And we define the whole community as all levels of the government, including state, local, tribal, and territorial federal partners, individuals and families, including those with access and functional needs, businesses, faith-based and community organizations, nonprofit groups, schools and academia, and media outlets. What are the divisions of FEMA and what do they do? There are 4 divisions of FEMA: response, recovery, mitigation, and preparedness. In our preparedness division, it is all the things we do to prepare before an event or disaster occurs. Response is what we do and all the things we do at the occurrence of an event or a disaster. And recovery and mitigation are some of those divisions that we do things in between. So recovery is what we do short-term and long-term to return our communities to a normal state. And mitigation is all the measures we take to reduce the severity of pain or lessen the pain. Mitigation is like when a child knows he's going to get a spanking from his parents and they pat their pants so that the sting won't be as great. There are 23 cadres in FEMA. The cadres are like our departments. Some are internal only to the agency, and some interface with the whole community or parts of the community. I work within the highlighted cadre interagency recovery coordination. And within this cadre, we have established the 4611 Equity Office. The Equity Office is set to provide technical assistance during the response phase of the Equity Office. We responded to inquiry concerns about disaster response. And during recovery, now we provide technical support information, and referral. There are 4 equity offices throughout the nation, one being in Louisiana, and actually the one in Louisiana was the first equity office established. Then there's one in New Mexico, Florida, and Montana. And so within our outreach, we want to reach out to underserved communities that have limited access to information in response to discovery response and recovery resources. This technical support is organized to identify underserved communities by 1, diversity and inclusion groups. So we may work with LGBTQ communities, the disability communities. We might work with the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs, with tribal organizations. Then we may have affinity groups, like specifically houses of worship, or we have a domestic violence initiative. There are specific communities like the Ironton community or the Buras community. And then there are industry-related support that we provide, like women-owned businesses or minority businesses. And of course, today, arts, culture, and humanities industry. In the words of our regional administrator, Anthony, one of the regional administrators, Anthony Robinson, we have everything we need if we use everything we have. And we use this as one of our mottos in the Equity Office, that if it's something in the that FEMA does not, if it's a program that FEMA does not provide, then we will assure that we will help you to work to get the adequate resources that you need. So today, as we look at protecting the soul of our Louisiana communities, we want to know what is the soul of our communities. For me and for the Equity Office, the soul of the community is arts, culture, and humanities. So we have looked at arts, culture, and humanities representing the soul of the community because it provides the fabric that clothes the community's essence in its vibrant and vulnerable state. It represents a strength the community relies on during disaster recovery and to empower resilience. Yet, it still remains an underserved community in equitable opportunities and emergency preparedness. And more specifically, there are, when attention is given, artistic representatives like museums, historic preservations, oral storytellers, and folk life curators still receive remnants of the resources. So this week, while working on our initiative with the Council on Aging, I was given a reassurance that arts, culture, and humanities are the soul of our communities. I attended an event hosted by the Mayor, Lionel Johnson, and the Iberville Parish Council on Aging. There was a reminder of the culture. It was a reminder. They had a band, and of course, they had an art display. And with this art display and this community event, there was dancing and movement. The attendance, the people were lively. There was a display of all of their art products, art from their arts classes. And I met Helen Ambo. And here's a picture of Helen Ambo. She's a quilter. She's a 3D sculpture artwork. And also she designs the bag that you see in the picture. This bag that Miss Helen has created is a bag that is a purse that has been made from Dollar General store bags. And so once the Dollar General store, which is a vital business in their community, found out that she was making purses out of the store bags, they supplied her with all the bags so that she can create this piece. Now, Miss Ambo welcomed the guest she's an artist, not recognized as an artist. She's a grandmother who speaks of having a scrapbook for every grandchild. And I listened to Miss Ambo tell the stories of her community and how they sat and designed how they wanted quilts or what next art project. And it showed that this art is a very important part of their community and their livelihood. And not only that, she's telling the stories and keeping the collections of her children, her family, her genealogy, that gives them information so that they will always have. And my message to Miss Ambo, because we were there to, of course, talk to them about preparedness for the upcoming hurricane season, is number one, when we talk about preparedness, to have a plan of what you will do in the event of an emergency. Because if the local government tells you to evacuate at the response of an event, we definitely want you prepared in how you're going to protect these collections. And so that put Ms. Ambo, that has to put Ms. Ambo to thinking, okay, what will happen to these scrapbooks? And not just Ms. Ambo, but any one of the, any artist or any art agency or organization, a museum, a library. How do you protect your collections? And I'm so glad that we have resources in the state of Louisiana that assist with artists and museums and all of the artistic representatives in helping them to protect those collections. With Ms. Ambo reminded me, of course, of Maida Owens of the Louisiana Folklife Program and those guiding questions. You know, what will our grandchildren wish we had done? What is the one thing you want your great-great-grandchildren to know about their culture or community? And when she spoke about having those scrapbooks, what if those scrapbooks was destroyed during a hurricane? I can remember even Hurricane Andrew over 20 years ago, and how the devastation in the St. Gabriel area, how did she protect those collections at that time, and what did she do to build those things up? This actually holds true to knowing the history of our communities. If we do not protect the information that we have, how will we know where we came from? Having this information documented, and if we don't document it, what will become of our communities and our neighborhoods if disaster occurs? Will they just be wiped off the map? And the only thing that exists is an exit sign. And so this is the example I like to use in our collections in protecting oral storytelling is the story of Rudock, Louisiana. So along the highway, you'll see the exit sign, and some of you may know the story and some of you may not, where there's an exit 7 of Rudock, Louisiana. But if you take that exit, all you will see is a swamp and a boat launch. But fortunately, the story of Rudock, Louisiana was captured by Miss Helen Schlosser Berg in 1990 by Mr. Wayne Norwood of the Louisiana Treasure Museum. And so Mr. Norwood captured her story by VHS, her memory very intact about the hurricane of 1915 when Rudock, Louisiana was destroyed. She discussed all the families. She provided a visual map of how the houses were set, even her pictures of her family, the pictures that she had. If you would look at this slide, in the left top corner, this is a picture of Miss Berg when she was in her preteens, right before the hurricane of 1915. And It is unfortunate that it's fortunate that Mr. Norwood captured her story, but it's ironic that Miss Berg died a few months after her story was captured. So I just want you to take a minute and think, if Mr. Norwood just hadn't had the curiosity of talking to a nice, old, friendly lady who talked about a hurricane and different things, if he didn't capture that story, what will we have? Just a sign that says Exit 7, Rudock, Louisiana. But even moreover, let's think about preparation for disaster and how do we protect our collections. On this slide, you'll see right here, this is the sign that shows Louisiana Treasures Museum. Now, Louisiana Treasures Museum was affected by hurricanes and storms. If you look in the picture to the right and you see the little dot, that's the same sign that's in the picture in the left. And that's where the water went into the building and on the grounds. At the bottom left, there's a Native American statue on the grounds, outside on the grounds of the Louisiana Treasures Museum. And you can see faintly the sign that says Louisiana Treasures Museum. The water was waist high outside of the museum. And this picture, the picture to the right, the third picture from the left, is inside the museum. And this is how the flood waters was in the museum. Now, unfortunately, the VHS tape that Mr. Norwood had of Miss Bird was on the lower levels of the museum and was destroyed. But fortunately, the company that PBS that had recorded his story had moved the VHS. They changed the VHS tapes onto flash drive, so we still have the story of Miss Bird and her recollections of Rudock, Louisiana. So my message today is the resources that are available in the state, any resources that are available from the federal level, please take advantage of these resources because we want you to protect those collections. When you protect the soul of the Louisiana communities, we get to keep the integrity, we get to keep the history, we get to keep the enjoyment, the enrichment of our great state. If you have any questions about how you can continue to protect your collections or anything that I have shared about FEMA, please contact me at adrienne.skidmore-thomas@fema.dhs.gov.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Adrienne. We'd now like to open the floor to any questions for Adrienne that you might have. If you can, please just raise your hand virtually, and that will bring you to the top of the list and recognize you, and we'll be able to identify you to ask your question. Gary?
Well, Ms. Adrienne, thanks so much for presenting that. You may have said it, but I didn't quite get the town where Louisiana Treasures Museum is.
Louisiana Treasures Museum is in Ponchatoula, Louisiana. It's in, I want to say Tangipahoa, or what's the parish that's near Slidell. It's between Slidell and New Orleans.
Okay. Well, to me, it was timely that you were talking about that. Just last night, we had a presentation at Nichols where we were talking about coming back from Hurricane Ida, and a very similar thing happened at the library in near Galliana and Cutoff in Lafourche Parish. And Dr. John Doucet talked about that just last night, that the collections that they had there were affected by Hurricane Ida. And a lot of things were saved, but some things were unfortunately lost. So, it's one of those things that, in a way, it's sometimes the second thing on our mind. We're thinking about our houses and our family, but
Yes.
oftentimes somebody in the community says, "Oh, and what about the museum? I need to make sure that some things get saved out of that." So I'm glad a few things were saved in that case. And now Louisiana Treasures, if that's still open, it's going to be on my list of things to see this summer. It's still a working museum.
Yes, it is. It's definitely a working museum. They have recovered. They're still doing some recovery, but the museum is fully open. Mr. Norwood loves to he walks every visitor through himself and gives all the information. And he actually wrote a book about the Rudock, Louisiana community, and it's called The Hurricane of 1915.
Thanks, Adrienne.
Tracy?
Hi, Adrienne. Thank you for your presentation. Question, how is FEMA working with individuals? And typically the kind of funding sources and the things that would help these organizations go to government agencies. And so how are you kind of working with these individuals to get resources in the hands of those artists and culture bearers?
Okay, so that actually starts at a state level. So when a declaration for an emergency, once a declaration is made, that declaration may go out first to assist the government agencies or the communities as a whole. So that once there's normally the key is when they're asking if individual families have lost things in their within their house, that may be an indication that the expansion of that disaster is going to individuals. And so once that disaster is expanded, you may be asked to come visit a site that may be set up, mobile sites that may be set up within FEMA. So when you are asked when there's the opportunity that this type of programs and services are provided, at this time you'll know if the event or the disaster does not affect individual households, it will only be the programs will only be provided through the parishes or through the local government or through state government.
So is FEMA, just to follow up on that, is FEMA then working with local governments to make sure that funds are being kind of allocated or dispensed to those culture bearers, or is it the kind of typical IA and PA funds?
Okay, I'm not sure so I will give you a general answer, and that answer may not actually answer your question. So if there is a specific answer you're looking for, please email me and I'll give it to the appropriate person. But to answer your question, FEMA works with the local government and the state government every day, all day, year round. We do not stop working with our state partners or our local partners. And that's in our preparedness. If you remember the slide about response, recovery, mitigation, and preparedness, we're constantly working as an agency with the local and state government. Okay, so it may depend on the division as well as the cadre.
Honora?
My question is more about, I guess, prevention of these kinds of things happening where you're not in the middle of a disaster, wondering if somebody bothered to save a collection, et cetera. Is there anything that FEMA provides as preparedness, plan ways to make sure that these items would be protected, or maybe alternative places to locate, or anything to make things more ready, so we don't lose them?
I am glad the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities are on this call. I would we would first recommend you, I would first recommend you to contact your state resources. And Aaron Vossen, I know I said that wrong. I'm glad you came on because they have emergency preparedness planning grants specifically for these things. I've sat on their grant question and answer. So I'm going to actually defer your question to Erin, if you don't mind, and let her answer that. And then all the other things that we have, or you can access online through internet resources. And Erin probably has a list of all of the resources that are available from a federal level and a state level. I'm glad to see you on, Erin.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you. And I'm so happy that you shared all of this information with everybody today. It's really incredible and helpful. And it's certainly been the focus of my first few months at the LEH this year. We've been concentrating a lot on both recovery in the wake still of Ida for our cultural infrastructure in the state. And we're also venturing out into, this is the first time in a long time that we've been in the state budget and have been able to offer some additional funding resources like the emergency planning grants that were available earlier this year to help get our cultural organizations situated in a place where they at least at minimum have an emergency plan in place so that they can, whenever, not if ever, but whenever an emergency does happen, be able to have a current and useful and updated plan that they can refer to and that everybody's up to date on. And, in addition to that, later on at the end of June, we're doing these Culture Ready LA workshops, and those are available. And thank you, Jonathan Foray. The Wetlands Discovery Center will be the host of one in the Houma area. But we're also hosting them at 4 other locations, one in New Orleans, one in Lafayette, and one in Ruston. And these are going to be day-long workshops. And I can put the link in there in the chat shortly, but you can register if you're a humanities-focused organization. And they're going to be held in collaboration with the Louisiana Association of Museums to help guide you and provide you with resources from professionals in the emergency preparedness field. So we'll be working with our consultant is Rebecca Elder, and she's a national consultant for, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the company that she's with, but it's it's a national recovery organization that helps institutions all across the nation be able to both recover and prepare for all of the various forms of emergencies that we encounter. So I'm going to go quiet for a little bit, but I did just want to thank you so much, Adrienne and Jonathan, for making this accessible to everybody. And I'll share that, that link where you can register for those workshops in the chat.
Thank you. One quick additional, does that, would those grants include archiving, like creating digital archives of materials, not just to preserve them in case the physical artifacts are lost?
So it depends on the context. If it's in preparation to transfer it where they would be safe, you can always make that argument. But in general, there are also a lot of other resources available for digitization of collections that are primarily federal. IMLS offers some grants in particular that I'm thinking of that are really probably your best focus for being able to digitize your collection. And other than that, you can certainly make the argument that transferring your digital into a cloud format so that you're still able to access things while you're unable to be at your site is a method of being able to preserve. So that we're happy to arrange calls and discuss things that you have in mind individually. We have a staff of three that we work with at our organization, but we're always happy. Our grants for this year have closed. It was a very busy spring, but beyond that, we're hoping to be able to continue offering these as long as we can, get that funding and demonstrate how there is still a very large need for this, particularly in our state and our region.
Thank you.
Jonathan, if there's, I'm reading some of the comments in the chat, and our work, our initiatives are stakeholder-led, external stakeholder-led. And so I've read a few comments about being coordinators of specific groups. If you feel that there's a need for an industry or a group to get information, as I said, for preparedness, for recovery, for any phase of disaster, you can reach out to me. And as I said, if our office cannot address your concern or the need that you have, we'll definitely find out which cadre, which department does, and I will make sure that that information gets to the appropriate cadre. I also saw a comment from John Ducey that 1915 hurricane also destroyed Leesville. Is it Leeville or Leesville? Because I know Leesville is by Alexandria area and Pine.
It's Leeville. It's by the coast. It's on the way to Grand Isle.
Okay, so I think I know where Grand Isle is, and I know the distance between that area and Grand Isle, and that's yes, the breadth of that storm was very intense, and so I would have a question for you, and that's: is there any documentation on the Leeville area if it was destroyed? Or who has that information, and what are they doing to make sure that we know that, and not FEMA know, but the community, the Louisiana community, has the historical collection or documentation of the Leeville community before and after 1915?
So that's a very good question. There was a big effort several years ago to rebuild Leeville and to gather that information. Unfortunately, that effort failed, but there's probably the majority of the information on Leeville is here at Nichols in the archives. And we actually inherited a couple of documents from what Gary LaFleur described earlier, the Ida destroyed historical centers in Golden Meadow and Galliano. So I'm going to say that the majority of the material on Leeville, which probably no longer has any permanent residents, is here at Nichols.
So we definitely want to, I definitely want to encourage you and the Nichols community, especially wherever that may be housed, if it's housed in the Nichols the university library or a special center, to make highlight of that, because that means Nichols holds the only evidence of what Leeville was. And I remember someone asked the question about if Louisiana Treasures Museum was still open. I remember when we visited the museum, Mr. Norwood had on site courthouse records that was written in the 1800s in the Black calligraphy pens. And he told the story that they actually had discarded them. They were getting ready to throw them away. And so he knew they had digitalized some of them, but just the idea of having the original records, some take for granted the artistic form of having something in its original format. But I know that those that are on this call and others truly appreciate being able to see what that looked like prior to even taking head. I mean, there's a debate over whether or not to teach it cursive writing. And to think the calligraphy writing itself was truly an artistic form, and just the beauty of calligraphy writing. So I just encourage you, Mr. Doucet, that whatever you can do to protect or to highlight what you guys have on Leeville, Louisiana, and any other communities that may have been wiped off the map by disaster, to really protect and highlight those stories.
Agreed, Adrienne. Good point. And I'll add that Dr. LaFleur and I are on a task force to create exhibits for the new coastal center at Nichols, which will break ground hopefully in December. And one of the ideas we had for exhibits is vanished communities. And of course, Leeville would be the prime example of that. So we are making we do have a current effort toward that end, and we'll continue to do that. So thanks, great point.
You know, there's another synchronicity between Rudock and Leeville, and that is what we were just talking about was they were both affected by a storm, but they also have both been affected by a road that got raised that's kind of bypassing the town, right? So right now, Highway 55 just goes right past Rudock, and you have to take an exit down there to see where the town used to be. And that's kind of happening in Leeville. It used to be on the main road, but now the main road is being lifted up on a causeway. And soon people are just going to pass with kind of like with no reason to go down. It's kind of sad. And it's sort of part of modern civilization. I get that, but it's sort of sad how that happens sometimes.
Well, the one thing, and some may not agree with this, but the sign being exit 7 in Rudock still does contribute to the economic development of the community or of the state, because the swamp tours definitely go by and do the boat tours and tell the stories, the real stories and the made up stories about Rudock, Louisiana. And so it still has, I'm glad that even though the true existence of the town only remains in an exit 7 sign and a book written by a nosy man talking to a nice little old lady, that they still can get some sense of the community when they go on the boat tour. And hopefully, Gary, maybe something might not be a swamp tour, but maybe there can be something that highlights the Leeville community and in the future, so that people know, and especially people who lived in Leeville, their ancestor, they'll become ancestors in the today, in the future, and the distant future coming. And it's good to know where Leeville was or is, and have some story about it. Who knows, some famous person may have had an ancestor that lived in Leeville, and our society today loves to make connections, especially with famed people and the communities of their historical roots.
Maida?
Adrienne, I'd like you to explain a little bit more about what the Equity Office is doing. My understanding is it's relatively new, isn't it? It's only a few years old.
Yes, the Equity Office has only been established since Hurricane Ida.
Okay. I'm curious about, are y'all charged to more go out and increase awareness of these issues and encourage people to take these steps to document or preserve and pay attention to the cultures and the artifacts associated with them? Or are y'all doing more proactive? I'm curious about your St. Gabriel visit. Was that y'all actively documenting or contacting them in order to help them raise awareness? Or I'm curious about your strategies, of what y'all are actually trying to do and accomplish.
I think every example you presented when you said, are you guys trying to do this, or are you we are attempting at all. So it depends on the initiative. So the initiative originally for Attending St. Gabriel is for older Americans, the Council on Aging. And so our office was approached or asked by an external community community organization to help the seniors or the older Americans of their communities to get prepared for hurricane season, which starts June 1st. And so this is a Council on Aging initiative. I was just motivated to include it in the Arts, Culture, and Humanities initiative because of what it stands for. It stands for the resilience of a community before, during, and after a disaster. I've had this conversation with Ms. Bianca, who works with the Council on Aging in St. Gabriel. And this is, we talked about if a disaster occurred and you had to evacuate the seniors, what do you think they would look most forward to? And so, of course, number one is going to be when I can return home. And number two, when will the Council on Aging activities start back again? And when can we have art lessons again? And that's when we focus on recovery, when we can return our communities back to what we considered our normal state of being. So that's where that conversation led. And just by happenstance, it holds true to what we're talking about when we talk about arts, culture, and humanities, because the culture of what they're doing in their community lends to how that community is going to be resilient to disaster and returning to a normal state and protecting their community and all that their community has to share. Did that answer your question? So for example,
what I'm hearing is that your primary goal is disaster prep and awareness.
We are preparation, recovery, we are mitigation, we are response. So for example, we have houses of worship as an initiative, and we work with the various houses of worship, the different types of religions, and we help those clergy to determine how that the house of worship may lend to or prepare or respond to, or once a disaster occurs, how to recover to return to a normal state, and how that the house of worship can be used to the congregants before, during, and after a disaster. So it just depends on the initiative. It depends on the stakeholder.
And also where we are, if we're in between. I guess I was thinking in between disasters.
Yes. So if we were in response to a disaster, our whole response and how we would handle inquiry is a different process. It's a different process. But in between disasters, we want to take as many initiatives and many opportunities in many audiences as possible, so that we can make sure that, number one, we're prepared. Number two, that we are mitigating and protecting what needs to be protected, and having a plan, definitely having a plan. And so, like I said, that could be industry related, that could be diversity, a diversity group or inclusive group. It could be a population of LGBTQ community. It could be a disability community, like the deaf and hard of hearing community may ask us to do something. It can be an affinity group, or a specific community. It could be the Nichols State community. We can't define what the initiative might be. All we can do is assign where they may fit in the categories and work with that stakeholder so that the audience can get the information, or the people can get the information about what is needed. And once again, I'm gonna sound like the FEMA mission statement, but it is who we are before, during, and after disaster. That is our goal. That is our mission. We want you tell us how you need the help before the disaster, during the disaster, or afterwards. And we work hand in hand with the state. We work hand in hand with the local governments, and we work hand in hand with all of those, the whole community as defined.
In light of the time, I'd like to move forward with the formal part of our gathering today, but I would encourage everyone to stay with us after 1 o'clock, where we have an informal discussion. If you have any more questions or comments for Adrienne, she'll be with us. So please stay tuned. So Adrienne, the next thing that I would like to ask you is what is your hope for the coast? So we asked this question of our presenters, and we'd like to ask it for you. What makes you hopeful for the coast? Because we all know without hope, there is no cause for action. So what's your hope for the coast?
My hope for the coast is that we take a self-evaluation and assess how we can protect our future, protect our culture, protect our community. I looked through the comments and the chat, and I saw that Mr. Doucet again wrote that my ancestors actually lived in Leeville prior to 1915. And that also reminds me of, my ancestors. When I was about 10, I interviewed my grandfather, and I remember writing, asking him stories about the farm and writing it on the back of a calendar. And I didn't realize at the time, now I realize what I was doing was documenting our culture, our history. And as a child, I've lost that because it was just something to do. I had an imaginative creativity spirit, and I just thought I was a little reporter and killing some time being bored. So I was going to interview my family members. And we take for granted that these are the stories that are for our future. We take for granted that, as, like I said, referencing the Louisiana folk life, guiding questions. What do we want our grandchildren to know, and what would they wish we would have documented? And I know for a fact, from being a 10-year-old to wherever I am today, that I wished I had that story that was written probably around 1983. And I just want to, my hope is that in the next year or the few months, John Doucet sends me an invitation to see what Leeville looked like from his documentations. If any of his ancestors were around before, and he had the opportunity and the privilege to be in their presence before they died, that he actually had conversations and that he can share this with the community. And so my hope for the coast is that we take a moment and protect the soul of our communities. And that is our arts, our culture, and the collections of documenting our stories.
Thank you for that. So we would also like to give you a little bit information on the position statement that we have. We've generated some QR codes, and so if you would like to sign on to the position statement, you can scan those QR codes, and one will take you to sign on as an individual, the other will take you to sign on as an organization. It's also important to note that A few months ago when we voted if we wanted to adopt the position statement, that doesn't mean that you signed on. You have to do one extra step and go to the website and sign on. So we'd encourage you to do that. The next thing we'd like to share with you is the dates for the working groups. So we have the French Language Immersion and Preservation Working Group. That's going to meet Tuesday, June 20th in person. So we're looking forward to that. The Culture and Coast Planning Working Group is going to meet Thursdays. That'll be June 15th and the 29th at 1 p.m. And let me go back real quick, because one of the things that I think is important to note is that they're currently focusing on cemeteries and cultural landscapes. So that's been a topic that's come up a few times in our meetings. So if that's something of interest, please join them for that working group. We also have Preparing Receiving Communities that meets Thursdays at 10 monthly. The next meeting is Thursday, June 15th. And then Artists and Tradition Bearers the third Tuesdays at 5. The next meeting is June 20th. Here's some information about how you can contact the conveners of those groups. If you want to get involved with them, these are the emails for those folks. You can join their group. You can also get some information on them if you go to louisianafolklore.org. Also, BCC is going to be at State of the Coast. We talked a little bit about that earlier. We've got 3 workshops where some of our members will be participants. So if you're at State of the Coast, we hope that you'll check out these 3 seminars. All right, our next gathering is going to be Friday, June 23rd. We are currently working out the format of what that's going to look like, so please stay tuned. We're going to be sending out some messages through Constant Contact and through Facebook. So once you see those things, we hope you'll register and join us for our next gathering. That's going to be Friday, June 23rd. Anybody have any announcements from our group? If you'll raise your hand virtually, that will bring you to the top of the list, and we can recognize you to share that. Gary.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm always chiming in here, but I thought we should announce that Teresa and Donald Dardar are receiving a Coastal Stewardship Award at the State of the Coast. And Teresa's on the call today, I think. I see her name out there. So, you know, y'all are doing some great work, Miss Teresa, and we applaud all that. You're a great ambassador for the cultures of the coast. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're being honored.
Agreed, 100%. Thank you for that, Gary. And thank you, Ms. Teresa.
Thank you. You too, Jonathan. You also getting an award. So congratulations to you.
Oh, I didn't know about any of that.
Dude, there's another John Foray who's getting a Coastal Stewardship Award, but it's not our Jonathan Foray. It's not our Jonathan.
Oh, okay.
It's
I thought it was our Jonathan Foray.
That was just to confuse everybody.
Oh,
okay. Thank you for thinking of me, though, Ms. Teresa. I appreciate it.
You could show up though, and y'all could both go up there at the same time.
Get the name tag first, Jonathan.
Hey, Jessica.
Jonathan, you deserve it, though.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, I want to second that. You do definitely deserve all of the awards, Jonathan. 100%. I just wanted to quickly mention that we have I work for the Gulf Research Program with the National Academies. We have a funding opportunity that's up to $500,000 for the next generation, empowering the next generation of community resilience leaders at this intersection of climate, health, and equity. I hope, Jonathan, that you are writing this down. Please apply. Yeah, I will put my email as well in the chat. If anyone has any questions, please check it out. Please share it with your networks. We want to, yes, empower the next generation. Do some good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right. Again, ways to connect with us through the Louisiana Folklore Society. There's the website address, and you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram. If you Google us, I'm sure you'll find some great videos of the 2022 gathering highlights, as well as Zero Skidmore's poem, The Flow of Culture. If you haven't seen it, please check that out. So this will conclude our formal part of the meeting. We would love for you to stick around until 1:30. We'll facilitate a conversation with Adrienne and then anyone else in the group who would like to speak.